How's it going, everybody? TheMythicalPickle here, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 video. So the other day, I got to thinking, what ways could I beat this game that would truly test my patience and make me wish I never installed it to begin with? And then I found my answer, the PS40. This is a gun mod that is in almost every way the same as the Deliverer, but it has one major quirk. Once you fire just one bullet from the chamber, your hands turn into sticks of butter and the gun falls straight to the floor. With that said, today we will walk the line of morality and patience in the pursuit of answering the question, can you beat Fallout 4 as a clumsy hitman? Now, without further ado, let's lay down some ground rules for the challenge run this time around. To start off, we have some standard rules that are likely to be seen in future challenge runs. That is, no companions of any kind aside from the quest mandatory ones. No use of power armor for any reason aside from quest requirements. Weapon bash is not allowed for any reason whatsoever. I must stay in character with all dialogue choices and fraction decisions. And last but certainly not least, I must beat the main quest. Now for the more unique rules. As you can probably guess by now, our hitman friend will be anything but well coordinated with a gun. Especially the PS40, a pistol that upon firing it unequips and drops to the ground. And yeah, you already know where I'm going with this. This is going to be the only weapon available to me throughout the run, and by extension it will be the only way I can damage enemies. One thing to note here is I decided pretty early on to not use the favorites quick select as it made it way too easy to circumnavigate the dropping of the pistol. Also, I will have a list of 10 ne'er-do-wells that we have been contracted with eliminating, all of which must be taken out before the completion of the main story, with the exception of one man in particular, but you'll see why a bit later. And to further the challenge, I also will be restricted to wearing the classic Hitman suit. Though, when it comes to those contract kills, most of them will require a special disguise in order to blend in. And just like my last challenge run, we will be running a few mods to help the game function a little smoother, as well as match the theme we have set. I made it a point to only pick mods that will in no way make me overpowered or render the challenge useless, but rather make the challenge feel a little more fresh and engaging. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive right in. Given we're a hitman, we're gonna need to look sharp and clean, and I know just the guy for the job. Say hello to Agent 25. Now that we're looking quite dapper, I had to get the special points set up accordingly. Now, these stats need to reflect a highly trained professional marksman that happens to have a knack for talking his way out of sticky situations. So that means we'll have a moderate perception for VATs, although, spoiler alert, I ended up hardly using VATs. I know, tragic. And I also put a good portion on charisma, as we'll want to be able to talk our way in and out of as many situations as possible. Put a few points on intelligence, as we want to be able to level up decently quickly. And a bit on agility for some more action points, and more importantly, all the sneak related perks I can obtain from it. Now that we're free from the shackles of the tutorial, I did my usual route of stopping by Diamond City. Though, much like last time, I had a very special weapon to find here, and it happens to be located in the Kim Diller's Hobble. So, when everyone was distracted by the scripted synth fiasco, I took my chance and quickly picked the lock, and found what I was looking for, the PS40. Now that we got the dang thing, let's see how smoothly it fires. Oh yeah, this one's definitely gonna raise my blood pressure. Anyways, now that we have our magnificent pistol and our slippery mitts, I made haste to Good Neighbor, home of lowlifes and mercenaries alike. Agent 25 should fit in real nicely. As usual, upon breaching the front gates, I calmly warned the resident dillweed that he was messing with the wrong guy. But after he just couldn't restrain himself, I was forced to take matters into my own hands. Also the floor, I guess. Once Potato Chip was no more, I made my way to Hotel Rexford and checked in for the night. But this wasn't a normal stay of leisure, for in this room was actually the last piece we needed to truly start this run. The Hitman suit. Now that I was quite literally suited and booted, I carried on with the main story as normal, starting with carefully eliminating every one of Skinny Malone's goons, all while remaining in the shadows, stealing souls like a thief in the night. Once me and Nick met with Skinny and his girl, I used that silver tongue we gave Agent 25 to convince Darla to take a hike. And Nick and I were just about to do the same, but just when Skinny Malone thought it was all over, it had only just begun. With Nick saved, I journeyed back to the agency and was about to sit down to talk business when it struck me. I hadn't actually gotten the holotape from Nate's body yet, which meant I couldn't progress the main story any further until I did. So I made my way all the way back to where we started and entered the vault. Things went mostly how you would expect. I absolutely pulverized a few rad roaches and continued on my quest for the holotape. I eventually made it to Nate and got what I needed off of him. But this is where things began to crumble. I took out a few of the roaches, but the very last one I took out was flying at me as I shot it. Now, remember, my pistol drops out of my hands every time I shoot it. So, do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah, this damn rad roach smashed its corpse on my gun in midair, sending it flying. So much so that no matter where I looked, I legitimately couldn't find the gun again. So I had to reload, which wasn't too big of a deal as I had just saved not too long ago, right? Where the hell is Nate? Ah, son of a... After running through the vault for what felt like an eternity, I somehow regained my sanity and finally secured the holotape and returned to the agency to talk to Valentine. After sweet-talking the receptionist into giving the keys to Kellogg's place, a few shakes of dog meat's tail later, it was time to journey to Fort Hagen and find Kellogg. But Kellogg was a high-value target, and Agent 25 needed to get some practice in before trying to take out a fellow merc. So it was time to start hunting down some freaks of the Commonwealth. Our first target was Brother Thomas. Now, don't let his title fool you. This is not a good man. In fact, he started his own cult in which he solely profits from stripping his so-called followers of all they own. Though in reality, it matters not the morality of taking out Mr. Thomas here, as when you're a hired gun, you don't ask why the name is on the paper. On my way over to his compound, I made a brief stop to change into a more acceptable disguise. And now that Agent 25 here was looking much more like a common yet sophisticated wastelander, I met with Brother Thomas at the amphitheater. After briefly trying to convince me to join his cult, I quickly agreed, and we moved around back of the stage. Now, right here, I would have taken the shot, but it seems that this wasn't the first time Brother Thomas had some assassins on his tail, as he had a fellow missionary keep watch on him and me. This meant that the timing had to be perfect. As soon as Thomas entered the room, I followed quickly behind him, shutting the door, and in the mere seconds it took for the missionary to reach the adjacent window, the contract was already complete. Next on the list was Doc Crocker, somebody you've almost certainly interacted with before. But did you know he went crazy and murdered one of his patients in cold blood? True story, though not the full story, as Crocker isn't a serial killer necessarily, but rather had a random mental break. Does that give him the right to death? That's not for me to judge. Again, a hit's a hit, so Agent 25 set aside his moral pendulum for the moment and began the hunt. As luck would have it, the moment I arrived at Diamond City, the shops were all closing and everyone was heading for home, including our target. Now, just before I could tell him, I quickly switched into something more inconspicuous. Oh yeah. Now I was ready and I followed him, though indirectly as to not gain his attention. And unfortunately, he decided to visit the old pub for a quick brewski before bed. So I made my way inside as well, taking a seat out of his line of sight, and patiently waited. Around midnight, our target was on the move again, hopefully this time to his place of rest. So again I got up and tailed him, and the second we exited the pub, I made sure the coast was clear and made my shot. Okay, let me try that again. And then the job was done. Wait a minute. Right. Forgot about the essential NPC thing. I'll be right back. Okay, let's try that again. The second we exited the pub, I checked my surroundings and drew my pistol. And after the second fumble of the gun, the target was down, and our contract was complete. Now our last contract before Kellogg was none other than Pickman, a deranged serial killer that took a liking to brutally murdering and torturing raiders. Now, raiders are no angels themselves. This particular situation begs the question of whether he's really a serial killer or perhaps just a vigilante looking to clean up the Commonwealth. Oh, God, never mind. Now, just before I went to meet this creepy serial killer, I decided to pick up a disguise that would show no weakness, but also not make me look like an average raider, in case I needed to talk my way out of any direct confrontation. Now that I was suited, I made my way into the Pickman Gallery and assassinated every single raider that dared stand in between me and the target. Oh, and did I mention I kept losing my pistol? Yeah, this place could have done with some better lighting. Now that most of the complex was cleared, I finally located Mr. Pickman, who was being interrogated by a few raider heads that weren't too happy with Pickman's killing spree. Once they opened fire on him, I carefully jumped down from the shadows and I picked them all off one by one. And instead of wasting any more time with pointless conversations with the serial killer, I popped and dropped my Glock, and our target was no more. Now that the wasteland was just a little bit cleaner, I wasted not another breath and headed straight for Fort Hagen. Now, even though Kellogg was one of our high-value targets, he already knew I was coming, so there was no point in wasting time with disguises for this particular job. So with gloves on and my pistol drawn, I entered the wolves' den, picking off every synthetic human that roamed the halls, in the only way that Agent 25 knew how. Swift and silent. Once I made it to Kellogg's room, I made sure to sneak around him as to get the best possible sneak attack, as it would deal double the damage. But this didn't go quite as planned. Though eventually I got lucky enough that I got a few well-placed shots on his dome, and he was down for the count. With Kellogg eliminated, I carried on with the standard proceedings like mind surfing and finding Virgil. Then it came time for the Synth Courser battle. Now at this point, I had no idea if I was going to be able to take this guy out, as his ballistic resistance was very high, and my DPS was extremely low. And most of the time, even if I could get a good sneak attack on him, he found me within seconds and then absolutely pulverized me. But I stayed strong and eventually landed on a genius plan: crouch in the corner and hope for the best. And surprisingly, it actually worked. I was able to take him out without getting detected, which meant I could finally build the teleporter. And I decided to go with the Minutemen for this, as for no real reason in particular, other than it just seemed easier than the other alternatives. Though once the teleporter was up and running, I remembered that Sean, the leader of the Institute, was our next high value target. So, before we could make the trek to his domain, I had a few other wasteland misfits to sort out first. The next unlucky soul on the chopping block was none other than Rosalind Chambers. Now, Dr. Chambers has made her life's work to destroy each and every synth ever created. But before she actually kills them, she locks them away in decrepit chambers with nothing but their thoughts. And while this may split many on the morality of it alone, being that at the end of the day they are still just robots, for those of you that think she is wrong for this, consider this. Her entire family was murdered in cold blood right before her eyes by a rogue synth. And from that day on, she dedicated her life to stopping what she thought was the ultimate evil. Not gonna lie, that sounds suspiciously like Batman's superhero arc. But I digress, as this mission is not one of morality and determining what is right and wrong. For Agent 25 had one job to do, and that was to eliminate the name of anyone that had the misfortune of being on his list. So I slipped into something a little more closely resembling that of Dr. Chambers' colleagues, you know, just in case things got a little messy, and then started dropping bodies like a drowning pool concert. Let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the... And at last, all who remained was Miss Chambers herself. While I could have heard her side of the story to justify her actions, I knew that in the end, it would matter not. As for our next target, he was a mean, grizzled pre-war mob boss that had eluded death for oh so many years. Eddie Winters. As far as targets go, this one should align with most moral compasses. His actions of the past are surely despicable, but again, this doesn't matter. So I just took a deep breath and got to work. After eliminating every raider in the tunnels of Andrew Station, it took some doing, but I finally tracked down Eddie's hideout. And then I forcefully breached his security door, but he was nowhere to be found. As it turns out, Eddie Winters only spawns as a part of a quest, which I would have done if I could have, but the only way to receive that quest is to get Nick Valentine's affinity to 750 out of 1,000, which would mean I would need old Nick Valentine to tag along for quite a while. And as we all know by now, one of my common rules is no companions. So it looks like once again, Eddie Winters evades his own demise. Lucky him. As for our next contract, this guy wouldn't be so lucky, as now I was indebted. Not completing a hit contract isn't a good look for a hitman, especially one as prestigious as Agent 25. So it was time to get serious. So I put on the silver shroud costume and roleplayed as a comic book character for a while. Nah, but really, our next target was none other than Sinjin, raider leader of a local raider gang that was troubling the likes of Goodneighbor and its surrounding inhabitants. And Sinjin only spawns as a final boss of the Silver Shroud questline, which means it was time to assume the role of Silver Shroud and hunt down these ne'er-do-wells and show them what they ne'er did well.
He will be judged for his crime.
I feel like the silver shroud stuff's really starting to get to my head. And then there was one. After picking off each and every one of his bodyguards from within the elevator, Sinjin was still unaware of my presence. So I just lined up my shot, and before the pistol even hit the ground, our target was down. And the contract was complete. Well, sorta. I kinda missed this one raider that was chilling in the background, so I went to take care of business as I normally do, but then I dropped the pistol into the void apparently, as I spent the next 5 minutes evading her while searching for my gun on the floor. Now, after that wild adventure, I finally retired the silver shroud costume and headed straight to the teleporter we built earlier, as now it was time to progress the quest. Now, going into the Institute this time around, I had 2 goals in mind: to progress Mayor McDonough's storyline with Dr. Ayo, and eliminate the second high-value target, Sean. Now, of course, before I could take out Sean and get banished from the Institute, I had to start working with them, which meant a whole lot of yapping about the Institute's many branches, which nobody really cares about. Sorry, Todd Howard. After talking to everybody and doing the first instructed quest, I was finally able to talk business with Dr. Ayo, who just flat out told me that Diamond City's mayor was a synth, and that we needed a status report from him. So, simply enough, I went and did the quest as normal, not harming the Robo-Mayor quite yet, and just like that, the political leanings quest was finished, which was a good thing as this was one step we needed in order to take out one of the last high-value targets, Mayor McDonough. Now that I got the intel I needed from the Institute, it was time to carry out our next contract. So, I slipped into an Institute jumpsuit, you know, just in case somebody sees me aiming a silenced pistol at their leader. I can just say it's for research purposes. Then I made my way down to Sean's penthouse suite, and with him sighted in, Agent 25 began to question why he's even here. Why he's about to shoot a man he barely knows. And for what? Nah, I'm just playing. Agent 25's a professional. After scrounging around on the ground for a while, I was lucky enough to find my pistol again, and now that Father was eliminated, the Institute had nothing left to offer me. So I made a calm exit to the transporter room and left without any further problems. As for now, I carried on with the main story, which meant having to choose which fraction to side with. Now, I was gonna side with the Brotherhood this time around, as I noticed I haven't actually ever sided with them in a video before. But Elder Maxon was one of our last targets on the list, so that probably wasn't gonna work out in the long run. And we all know that killing Father completely ends the Institute's questline. And don't even get me started on the Railroad's questline. There's no way I'm making that mistake twice. So, because there was literally no options left, I found Preston and let him carry out his favorite pastime, scribbling random shit on my map a few dozen times. Eventually, the Minutemen got big enough to activate the castle's reclamation quest, so I journeyed on over, easily clearing out the mirelurks that lurked there, and then finally the ugly beast arose from the water. Now, things went pretty smoothly for quite a while, till I got the queen's health down to just a hair, and then the worst case scenario happened, again. I dropped the pistol and legitimately spent the next 5 to 10 minutes trying to find it. Now, I could have reloaded, but that would have restarted the entire boss fight, and I was honestly surprised I had made it as far as I had, so that wasn't about to happen. Instead, I hastily scoured the mud-ridden ground for the gun, all while having to precariously dodge the queen's nasty-ass loogies. And finally, I found the gun and swiftly put an end to the queen's reign of terror. Though, sadly, it was out of the frying pan and into the pits of hell, as I had no choice but to continue the Minutemen questline, which meant letting Preston mark his beloved settlements on my map. Again, and again, and again. Son of a... After a seemingly endless string of gopher quests, I was pulled from my madness by the likes of Ronnie Shaw, everyone's favorite drill sergeant grandma. But after talking to her about rifling through the relics of the past and all of the Minutemen's riveting history, I nearly dozed off. That's when I realized I was done with this Minutemen stuff. It was too slow and too repetitive. I needed more explosions and self-righteousness, meaning it was time to join the ranks of the Brotherhood of Steel and find where I truly belong. With this in mind, I completely ditched the gun granny at the castle and made my way to the Cambridge police station, where I made sure to make a very good impression on my soon-to-be comrades. Now that me and these Brotherhood fellas were a little more well acquainted, I followed Paladin Dance on his regularly scheduled field trip to ArcJet Systems, where Agent 25's ever-increasing stealth abilities played a key role in taking out the synthetic occupants. But then again, I was still not nearly as effective against the plastic mugs as Dances with Wolves over here. After the field trip came to a close, I briefly spoke to Paladin Dance once more, where he offered me a position amongst his crew and an honorable position in the Brotherhood of Steel. And since both you and I already know what my other options are, I didn't hesitate in accepting his offer. And in no time, we were all cruising straight for the Brotherhood's base of operations, the Pridwin. Once aboard, I spoke to Elder Maxon and he awarded me the rank of Knight for pretty much no reason. But hey, I'm not complaining. Then I proceeded to speak with each and every division leader aboard this big old blimp, and at last I obtained my Brotherhood Knight garb from the Quartermaster Tegan. Now that I was all suited up, looking like a fresh Brotherhood of Steel recruit, I went to settle some affairs with Elder Maxon on the lower balcony. What? Did you really think I was gonna side with the Brotherhood and abandon my contract on Elder Maxon? Not a chance. Like I said before, Agent 25 is a professional. Now, as soon as I realized I wasn't about to get another vertibird lift to the ground, I found a catwalk closest to the water's edge and took a leap of faith, and just by the skin of my teeth, I cleared the water and swam for cover, while a vertibird angrily open-fired on me. Now that I was in a safe-ish harbor, I got the Brotherhood rags off and resumed my role as the legendary contract killer that can't seem to hold a pistol correctly. With almost every target now eliminated aside from our good friend Mr. Mayor McDonut, I continued with the Gun Granny's quest and spoke to Preston on how to proceed. Though things didn't remain quiet for long, as just after talking to Preston about the Minutemen's newest member, the castle went under siege by the Institute. Part of me was worried I had created a martyr by killing Father and leaving the rest of the Institute intact. And I don't think I was too far off, as this battle was a bit of a nightmare, considering I spec'd solely into undetected eliminations. But just like always, I made do. Come on. After a few mishaps, I was finally able to drop most of the synthetic bros, but just my luck, I ran out of ammo. So I had to wait around a pretty good while till Preston, the destroyer of worlds, blasted them with more fire than they could keep up with. After Preston's pretty impressive display of pyrotechnics, the Institute was put at bay for now, but just as Preston suggested, this meant war, so it was finally time to storm the Institute and end this battle once and for all. But before that, I made sure to stock up on ammo and stim packs for our likely brutal journey ahead. And I even grabbed quite a few stealth boys, as I had a feeling it was going to be a little bit difficult to stay undetected in the bright, sprawling rooms of the Institute. Now that I was all geared up, I discussed the details with Sturgis, and it was to the sewers for me. After carefully making my way through the underside of the Institute, I finally made it back inside and quickly teleported in the rest of our crew. At this point, I wasted no time navigating through the long synth-ridden halls, all while under the cover of my stealth boy. But eventually I made it into the main common area that was locked down until each and every synth was eliminated. So, Agent 25 put on his big boy pants and got to work. After clearing out that area, I went to Father's room to shut down the security, while passing by a brutal reminder of a past contract. Now that the security lockdown was released, I rushed to the reactor room area, carefully took out the turrets, and activated my last stealth boy. And I was actually able to sneak past each and every one of the guards and plant the charge, with them none the wiser to my presence. Though that wasn't gonna last much longer, and for some reason the Minutemen were taking their sweet time pulling me out of there. But eventually I was teleported to the rooftop, where I took care of the largest looming evil in the Commonwealth. And with that magnificent explosion, the nuclear option quest was now complete, and so was the main story. Now, normally this is where our journey would end, but if you remember from earlier, we still have one last contract to complete before Agent 25 can leave the Commonwealth for good. Mayor McDonough. So I put on some clothes that were a little more fitting for our final mission and headed to the town square of Diamond City, where I found Danny, the chief of security, lying on the ground with a gun wound, claiming that Mayor McDonough was a synth. But we already knew that. So I made my way up to the mayor's VIP office to find Piper trying to put an end to the Donut Man herself. After talking to McDonut briefly, I used Agent 25's charm to get him to release his hostage. Then I told him to leave and never look back. And I meant that literally, as the moment he turned to leave, I sent a bullet from my very difficult to handle pistol straight into his robo noggin. And with that final contract now complete, it was safe to say that yes, you can indeed beat Fallout 4 as a clumsy hitman. I hope y'all enjoyed this run. I actually had a lot of fun recording it, and as much as I joked about its annoying nature, I really enjoyed the challenge, and I seriously can't wait to do some more challenge runs with these wacky guns and character builds in the future. And if you guys find any weapon or character mods that you'd like me to do a run with, let me know in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button as well, so you never miss another absurd challenge run like this one. Also, if you guys have any ideas on what challenge runs I should do next, drop a comment down below. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and as always, remember to smile.